The Shout, written by Snell, narrated by Tony Cookson. Chapter 1. One huge wave lifted the stern of the coaster, propeller and rudder out of the froth and oil just as Bill Hawken tried to swing the Tamar Class lifeboat into a better position. The bronze screw must have been about 5 feet in diameter. With no medium but air to resist, the prop picked up speed. Even above the scream of the wind and the bombardment of wave against hull, the noise of unregulated energy penetrated the darkened space of the Tamar's wheelhouse. Christ! Bill was a man rarely moved to profanity, but this was the worst sea as coxswain he'd ever put the crew into. Visibility was practically nil, and navigating the boat was a nightmare. He increased thrust instinctively on dual throttles, at the same time steering the craft in a desperate broadside away from the steel plate to the grey-painted hulk hovering above him. The boat's mechanic, Chris Pascoe, seated back from him, silently thanked the designers for saving his back as his chair cushioned the above change in pitch and rotation. It took almost the full 20 centimeters it was designed to travel, leaving its occupant free to focus on the boat management system captured on the screen facing him. The blue fiberglass hull of the RNLI Carrick Maid hit another monstrous wave, sweeping it side-on back into the path of the descending propeller. "Look out, she's coming down!" Pascoe didn't need to voice the obvious as he braced himself against the seat's harness. In the gloom, the crew caught a glimpse of the rudder flapping, the reason the coaster had put on a mayday call in the first place. They weren't going to make it. The leading edge of the first blade to hit them scythed into the side rail at the stern of the rescue craft. They felt a shudder and the tug of metal being ripped from decking as the rail wrapped itself around the propeller, descending on them like a huge kitchen blender. The lifeboat pitched upwards and veered away from its nemesis, but stayed uncharacteristically bow-high, with a distinct list to port. The upward bias wasn't normal, but the crew, conscious of the change, had more pressing responsibilities to contend with than any unease of the attitude of the boat. With the kind of instinct developed over years of navigating these coastal waters, they somehow felt the change wasn't threatening. Intuition took precedent over anxiety in a carefully selected and trained crew. Trust in the coxswain had developed, along with respect, otherwise too many shouts would have ended in disaster. Their immediate concern was Dogtooth Rock. Even in this heaving sea, the boat had picked up speed in response to Bill's earlier hand on the throttle. The rock was visible in the spray-laden gloom, as the surge of wave breaking against its seaward face gave it a luminous white apron of water. Thousands of tiny bubbles acted like a skirt of minute lenses, collecting and magnifying what little light penetrated the scene. Dogtooth had claimed a number of hits over the centuries, but this time the granite hazard would not be shattering any hulls. The lee shore was about 100 meters or so from the duel being enacted by a rescue boat and coaster, and Dogtooth was the only outcrop in the vicinity they needed to worry about. Bill brought the craft around, this time alongside the starboard flank of the distressed vessel, at the same time keeping an eye on the demarcation between the clifftop profile and the only just lighter backdrop of sky. Another huge wave lifted them above the decking of the coaster and deposited them obliquely across its gunwale. The boat teetered, not knowing whether to slide forward onto the deck or slip back into the sea. The crew braced themselves for what seemed eternity as the rescue craft swayed and twisted on its keel. As coaster and boat together dropped into a huge trough, a peculiar lull in the motion left them in a kind of limbo. Bill had throttled down the racing screws as the rescue craft started to roll on the gunwale. He could see one of the coaster's seamen above them at the end of the side deck outside the bridge. A counterwash from the port side of the coaster hit the bow of the little boat and flushed it back towards the sea. Its keel pointed up at 40-odd degrees. The boat's radio operator looked instinctively back through the rear door to the grey turbulence they were about to plunge back into. "Bloody hell! We've got her screw embedded in our sterns." "Hell, no wonder she's riding bow-high," the mechanic shouted above the screech of the keel as it scraped across the larger ship's edge. By this time they were about 3 meters above the water. The force of re-entry could blast the rear door inwards, and they knew it. The coaster rolled on its starboard side, putting the rescue craft nearly horizontal.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?